Alright, it's time for our next flipped classroom instruction video. This one is going to be on public speaking and speeches. You guys should have been given a form that is for guided notes that you'll see here. Follow along and fill that out as we go through the presentation. As always, the advantage of flipped classroom is you can pause it if I'm going too fast, rewind it if you did not hear something, or move at your own speed. Plus, it gives you a chance to mute me. Alright, so we're going to get started here, and this is on public speaking. Now, I know a lot of you guys are nervous when you're speaking in front of a large group or in front of the class, and that's part of what this lesson is about, getting you over those fears. So, formal speaking is given at specific places and times and for specific reasons, but there are three main goals. The first goal, much like writing an essay, is informative, the second is persuasive, and the third is entertainment. There are a lot of things to keep in mind when giving a speech. Some of these things include your purpose, the occasion you're speaking in, when you're going to be giving your speech, where you're giving your speech, the audience you're giving your speech to, your body language, and some other factors or variables that we're going to get into in a little bit more detail soon. So the first thing that we need to focus on is identifying purpose and occasion. Purpose is what you want the speech to accomplish. Do you want to convince someone of something? Do you want to entertain them? Do you want to change their mind or reinforce what they're already doing? You need to keep that in mind as you're preparing your speech because that can greatly impact the success of the speech. The purpose can definitely influence your presentation. For example, you need to ask questions like, who are you speaking to? You may need to adapt your word choice to suit your audience. So, for example, if you're giving a speech at a political rally, you should be using a lot of political verbiage and political words. If you're giving a speech at an elementary school, you might want to use vocabulary that would be more accessible to that audience. You also need to keep in mind occasion, which means when and where the speech is going to be taking place. The location or a specific event that you're giving a speech can also influence you say and how you say it. An event or reason for the speech is also really important because the reason may influence your words. If you're at an environmental rally, you should be speaking about things that may focus on the environment or pollution and that sort of thing, and that can change your approach and what you're speaking about. So there are a couple questions you need to ask yourself as you're preparing yourself to give a speech. Is the occasion formal or informal? And just like in any other context, formal is something along the lines of like a fancier event, something where you need to portray yourself in a more professional way. In a formal event, you need to make sure that you're preparing yourself to speak in a more careful way. You're using standard formal English and you're pronouncing words very carefully and correctly. Informal should use less formal language and be more kind of simulating a hanging out with your friends kind of speech. You can worry less about word choice and diction as well as the manners that you speak with. Okay, so the next question is, when will you give the speech? Time and day affect your speech, whether you realize it or not. If you give it on a holiday, you can connect your ideas to the date. For example, one of the most famous speeches in world history is Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. Now, it was given on the anniversary of signing the Declaration of Independence and passing it through, so it really gave him an opportunity to connect the meaning of and purpose of the speech that he was giving with historical context, which kind of makes it more meaningful for your audience. If you're giving a speech when people could be tired, like early in the morning or after a meal, you might want to include a lot of surprising, attention-getting information, or the way you speak. Okay, now where your speech will be given. Location also affects your preparation. Are you going to have a microphone or a podium or a huge audience or an auditorium? You need to be able to figure those things out so you can mentally prepare yourself by visualizing what your speech is going to be like. And some other conditions that could affect your speech are time limits. You may have planned for 45 minutes of a speech, but you only have 3 minutes to give it, so that could really affect what you have time to speak about. You also have to make sure that you focus on a specific topic. Sometimes it's very easy to get off topic or off task when giving a presentation, and you need to focus on whether or not you can use your notes. For example, in many political speeches, like a debate, it's not always a great idea to be staring at your notes the whole time. It's more supposed to be a reflection of what you feel. So those are all different scenarios where the context dictates how your speech is going to go. Okay, so when it comes down to analyzing your audience, which we discussed briefly, you need to plan your speech and consider their needs and interests. Use vocabulary that they will understand. Avoid jargon, slang, or technical terms. Use proper terms that can be accessible by a large majority of people. Also focus on your audience and what kind of analogies you use. I may not be using an analogy right now that would focus on voting or taking a driver's license because that's not something that my audience, you guys, have experience with. I might make analogies or use examples that focus on school experiences or things of that nature. Okay, so as you prepare for your speech, you need to gather information to support it, just like you would for writing an essay, which you guys are very familiar with at this point. Your information should fit your topic, purpose, and occasion. It should be interesting to both you and your audience. And the information can come from personal experience, previous assignments, or formal research. It's usually a great idea to have a balance between personal experience and formal research because it gives a personal feel to what you're saying, but it also gives you credibility as you're using research habits. Now, as you prepare to give your speech, you need to organize your notes. You're not usually, when you give a speech, going to be reading from a paper. You're giving a speech. So what you should do is come up with some form or some method for using notes for a speech, like setting up a poster board in the back of the room if it's a small enough room, or using note cards. Now, there are a lot of ways you can use note cards, and tips that I have for you for a successful speech would be to have each main point on a separate card. That way you're not confusing your thoughts, you're not jumping ahead or behind. I would also add notes to each card that supports your main point. You can also make special note cards for things that you plan to read, like quotes or statistics. Using quotes or statistics are a great way to, again, give some validity to what you're saying and really connect your audience with someone who's more of an expert in the field. I would also include a note card that gives information on when to show visual aids. For example, if you're giving a speech and you have a PowerPoint presentation, you could always write where you're going to change the slide. I would also make sure that you number your cards to keep them in order. I can't tell you how many times when I was a high school student or a middle school student that I had to give a speech, I did not number my cards and they got all out of order and I was very, very confused and my speech made no sense. So that's something that takes very little time and is very easy to do and can go a long way in helping you have a successful and organized speech. Now, when it comes time to deliver a formal speech, rehearse, practice. It builds confidence, you notice and correct mistakes that you make, and if you practice in front of an audience or mirror, they can give you feedback. Feedback is when they're giving you suggestions, kind of like peer editing. I would also make sure that you practice your speech the same way you present it. If you're going to be practicing it with a PowerPoint, that would be great for a speech where you're actually giving it with a PowerPoint. So try to replicate the scenario or the experience before giving the speech so you can adjust accordingly to any difficulties you might have. Plan as many practices as you feel like you need to make yourself comfortable. And that might be different for different people who might have a fear of public speaking or less time for people who are very comfortable speaking in front of a large group. Okay, when it comes time to delivering the speech to an audience and the show is on, make sure you're prepared. Look over your things ahead of time. Make sure everything is organized ahead of time. Make sure all your notes and visual aids are ready to go. If at all possible, have a backup plan just in case something goes wrong. And remember your purpose and concentrate on your audience as you're participating in your speech. No one ever wants to see a speech where you're just reading off of the cards. So make sure that you can use those cards as a supplement to your overall speech, but not read the whole time. So when it comes to an informative speech, make sure you're doing thorough research. Know your topic well. You're going to be presenting relative and insightful information and try to use the examples and data that you've researched in your main points. And make sure you're clear and well informed on the information you're presenting because you are, after all, presenting. You're supposed to be an expert on the thing that you're talking about. Make sure you do not exceed your abilities or your knowledge base. Don't talk about stuff that you have no idea what you're talking about. So if you're giving a speech on different laws that were passed in various government forms, don't try to talk about stuff that you've never heard of or has nothing to do with it. Don't talk about government systems or laws that have no relation to the things you're talking about, and definitely don't take it to another level and start talking about dinosaurs. Okay, now this is one of the most important things I think you can address through giving a speech: body language. Make sure you're making eye contact with your audience. If that makes you nervous, you could just scan the room and look at people themselves, or if you're really nervous, look at their foreheads. It helps convey honesty and sincerity and is more conversational. It makes your audience feel like they're having a one-to-one conversation with you rather than just reading. And it also can communicate intensity and emotion and passion. Your facial expressions also make a big difference when you're giving a speech. You can do stuff like wink, making eye contact, raising an eyebrow, smile, frown, or sneer, and that can help convey your emotions or your feelings about a certain topic. Also use gestures. Give a thumbs up motion with your hands, shrug, nod, or shake your head. Those subtle movements and very minor things can really go a long way in helping emphasize the points that you're making. Gestures can oftentimes replace words, they can be used to emphasize words or phrases, and they can add meaning to a speech. And make sure that you have good posture. Good posture means you're standing tall and straight, you're speaking nice and loud, and it gives the audience an attitude of confidence and poise. It shows that you're calm, you're confident, and you know what you're talking about, and that's why you should be listened to. That's it. You guys have an additional question on your worksheet. I want you to make sure you answer that before you come into class. The question is, why do you think making and maintaining eye contact with the audience is important? If you need to go back and rewatch, rewind, or do anything else with this video, it will be posted on the class website and on my class YouTube channel. If you have any questions, send me an email or talk to me in class tomorrow. Have a good day.